Welcome, everyone, to Celebrating the Art and Culture of Kentucky online series. I'm Mark Brown, the Folk and Traditional Arts Director for the Kentucky Arts Council. Let's begin with a land acknowledgement. A land acknowledgement is a formal statement that recognizes the unique and enduring relationship that exists between Indigenous peoples and their traditional territories. Today, we stand on ground occupied by ancient peoples whose history has been lost, but whose legacy remains. The evidence of these ancient people can be seen all over Kentucky through the mounds and artifacts left behind. Today, over 170 American Indian tribes are represented by their members living and working in the Commonwealth. Let us honor those who were here and those who are here now and build on the legacy of stewardship of the land they left for us unto the seventh generation. Today is our third out of 4 conversations with Kentucky artists. Today, we will hear from 2 artists that we met while working on a traveling exhibit with our partner, the Kentucky Native American Heritage Commission. The exhibit was called Native Reflections, and it included artwork by Native American and American Indian Kentuckians. Some are enrolled members of Indigenous nations, and others are not enrolled but have Native American culture and heritage, and whose art is Native inspired. The artists today are Jannette, parent of Princeton, who is Cherokee and a visual artist, and Fred Nez-Keams of Harrodsburg, who is Navajo and is a musician and flute maker. Fred created the 2022 Governor's Awards in the Arts, which are Yellowknife Navajo flutes that were presented to the awardees, and we have one on display here in the office. Today's conversation will be facilitated once again by artist and arts professor Cintia Segovia of Murray, Kentucky. So take it away, Cintia.
Thank you, Mark. And thank you, Kentucky Arts Council, and especially Mark and Emily for organizing all these series. And today I would like to welcome Jannette and Fred. And thank you also everyone that is here just participating in this conversation. We would like to make this as interactive as possible, so feel free to put on the chat any questions you might have, and we will get to them. So the first question I'm dying to know from you guys is, what is your art about? Like, if you could explain to us, like, what are the different sections, what would you say?
Who do you want to go first?
You can go first.
All right. I'm Jannette, and I work in many different media, but my main focus, my main passion is a series of contemporary acrylic paintings on canvas, and they feature the Cherokee language written across the front of them. If you can see one behind me here, this is entitled America, and they are an attempt for me to share the culture, the stories, the mythology, and especially that language that the Cherokee have. Each of the paintings comes with an information card, the pronunciation, the translation, and even a story that possibly inspired me to paint that painting. So that's where I'm at right now.
Thank you. Fred?
That's good morning in my language. I'm a full-blooded Navajo from Arizona. My name is Fred Nez-Keams, and I am a flute maker and performer. I first picked up the native flute when I was in my early teens, and I just kind of dabble with it. And then as I got older, I decided to make it, which was about 20 years ago. And I went through all these different kind of wood, and it actually took me a year to actually make a flute that actually sound good. But I did go through a lot of different kind of wood, and I actually self-taught made flute maker, had a little help on the way, but it actually took me a year to make a flute sound presentable and playable. So now I just use Kentucky cedar, because cedar is a traditional wood back home that we use for everything, for ceremonies, for cooking. We even add the ashes into a thing called earth cake that we make. So cedar is the wood I use. So, and I actually put my culture into my flute to make it different and unique, sets different from other flute makers' flutes. So when you see my flute, you can recognize the work and the culture that goes into my flutes.
Okay. So you guys talk about like the introducing your culture into your artworks, right? Like it sounds like a holistic approach to it, that it involves also like your life. So can you tell me a little bit about how like Jannette, I know that you not only do painting on canvas, but also in different materials. So how do you think about the different elements that Kentucky has provided to you for you to make art? Like, how do you draw inspiration from everyday life and like do this transition of like introducing it in something visual?
Sure. So really, inspiration is everywhere. You know, if you're paying attention and aware of your surroundings, spirit begins to expose you to these things that can inspire you. You know, so many of my paintings are being the stories of the Cherokee that I have learned. Those stories talk about animals and the earth and all different aspects of the things around us, and the stories explain why the world is the way it is, or their lessons through the animals of how to behave correctly in our world and how to have correct manners and all of those things. So it's not a big jump for me to look at the animals around me and the trees and the landscapes and the storms, and to turn those things into paintings. So to coordinate the stories with those things that I see around me. You know, there's I have paintings about deer. A friend rescued a deer, and so I took photos of it and I painted from that. There's paintings of storms rolling in through my backyard, and so it's a story about the thunder and the lightning and how those are brothers. And there's about mother corn. And so again, painting an Indian corn cob, and all kinds of just everywhere I look, there's mountainscapes, you know, so I've got paintings about that, and birds, wolves, animals of all kinds. So it's not hard to find that inspiration for me. In fact, I have too many ideas and I have a hard time sorting through them and deciding what to do at this time. It's a little bit overwhelming.
Thank you.
Well, for me, making flutes is, I'm still learning, even though it's I'm going on 20 years of making flutes. And what really inspires me to make a better flute is the way I play. I play a lot of different styles. I play traditional, I play contemporary. I play with any musician that wants to play cello, banjo, clarinet, just about anything I could play musicians with. So to make my flutes, I try to make my flutes by pushing it to the limit, meaning that, you know, one of the style I like to play is a lot of jazz, you know, that just comes natural. So when I play jazz on the native flute, you know, I have to push the flute where it can keep up with me. And so the flute doesn't build up with condensation. That is the reason why I use cedar, Kentucky cedar. And, you know, we live here in Kentucky, and cedar is used for a lot of things to keep the moisture out. So when I use cedar, it gives me that bright sound, crispy, and I can play it for a long time, and I can actually push that flute. So I could play for almost 30 minutes with one flute. And to make it even better, like if I don't have the key I need, I actually go in and I make it. I actually started out with, before I was making the flute out of wood, and I was putting all that time into it, and then making holes, like making the different key, then I'll start making different holes. So by the time I finish, there's holes all over, but it'll be tape. And then after that, once I get the holes where I need it to be, and then I'll take it back to the wood and I'll make it a flute like this. But doing all that, I skipped all that. So I actually went to a PVC pipe. So that eliminates, the carving and all that. So once I figure out what key on a PVC pipe, and then I'll take it to the wood. So that's how I make my my flutes in a key that I need in a different key. And I like to play a lot of different styles, like dub. What influenced me is like anything on the radio that has a beat. That's what inspires me to be a better flute player. And yeah, so that's how I actually incorporated my whole culture into this flute. Most of the flutes that are made are nice and round, but for me, I had to set mine different. So I wanted my flute to be different. So my living room kind of looks like a little museum with all the potteries and the Navajo rug, the kachinas, and all the jewelries that we have. So my wife was saying, why don't you just put all of this culture into your flute? So I said, okay. So we live in hogans, which calls Hawan, Hawane. That's how you say it in Navajo. So the home is an 8-side log cabin. I mean, yeah, like an octagon. So the wood is actually chinked out. So I made the flute chinked out, made it look like that. So on top of the hogan, our home is filled with dirt, and there's like a little stovepipe. So that's kind of where I made this part here. And at the end of the flute, I actually, beveled it out like Navajo pottery. So that's where I incorporated that. And then I got the bear claw, which I added, because the bear is one of the animals that we hold sacred. Different tribes hold different animals close to them. So bear is one of the one of the animals that we don't bother, we don't hunt, we don't eat, we leave it alone. It's an animal that has power and very spiritual. So I added that, and then I added the turquoise, which is Navajos are jewelry makers. So I just added the little chip turquoise in there. And this little block here, I actually made it represent the Navajo and the ladies' bun, like when they like the ladies will tie up their hair in a bun. So that's where I made this block. But most of the time, different flute makers will make different totems like bird, duck, horse, and all that. But I made mine the Navajo bun. So I actually have it tied to like in a traditional way. So, and actually have the Navajo marking right here, the ne. So so when somebody sees it, they know it's made by a Navajo. So that's how the flute came about. That's why I call it the Yellowknife Navajo flute.
Oh, very interesting. And maybe in the next round we can play a little bit of your music too.
Yes.
Oh, that would be perfect. I feel that I'm learning a lot today about like a lot of different things, and so it's been very informative. Thank you. So Jannette, how like we see this artwork behind you, I can identify the flag very well, but then there is other things that I don't understand. So can you tell us a little bit more about your work?
Sure. So the words here, the lettering, is actually the Cherokee syllabary in the top line. So they have 86 sounds in the Cherokee language, and each one of those sounds has a symbol that represents that syllable. All right. So unlike English, that they're just letters, that they're formed to put together. These are actually sounds and syllables. So the first line here, it looks like a D and a B and a C up here. Those are ah. The D is the sound ah. Next one is ma, yay, and then pli, which is the C look. All right. So the bottom line is how to pronounce it to help pay forward the learning, so that when somebody purchases it, they can look at it and try to share that information and tell people what it means. When I first started learning this language back in 2005 is when I first started taking courses, and I had such a hard time memorizing all of the symbols. And so I was trying to figure out how to make that stay in my mind a little better. And I realized that if you say something, you speak it, and then you write it, that it sticks a little bit better in your mind. And of course, I can hopefully remember most of the titles. I can remember the titles in English of my paintings, but if I can add the Cherokee name into my memory, then I'm learning the language. So that became my way of making it so I could learn it, and I'm hoping it will help other people too. I have, goodness, probably, I think the number is over 80 paintings in this series now. A lot of them have sold, some of them haven't, and they come in little small sizes all the way up to a 54-inch painting, which is of 3 horses, and it's called 3 Horse, which is Cho'i Sokili. And I have some other little ones here. See if I can get the shine off of that a little bit. This is of a wolf curled up, and it says it's sleeping. So it's Galaska is how that's pronounced. So again, that first syllable is here with the ga, la, and then the S has its own symbol, and then ga, there. So kind of limitless as to what I can paint within this series. And then I have one more here, which is simply a moon. And it's pronounced Nahda Sonohi Ehi. And Nahda means sun, and Sonohi is it sleeps. And Ehi, I'm sorry, Sonohi is night, and Ehi is it sleeps. There we go. So not everything is a direct translation, like word for word. There's an intent and a meaning, and back thousands of years ago, they would have said things differently than we would say them now. And so, being an older culture, there's more thought into that translation. It's not just like sun, has a different, using the sun in your moon description. You wouldn't think that, but they are related to each other. But it's the sun that sleeps at night. So it's limitless, and I'm forever learning with it. And it's been an incredibly wonderful challenge and inspiration to my life. It's changed my life completely after that first lesson in Cherokee. It's been a fun ride. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I feel that what you're saying is like the word sun is so just very limited and just points at something that is like, oh, there it is, the sun, that's it. Like I can move on to something else. And what you're saying is a lot more complex, and how it connects with like the cosmology and all
Yes.
the parts of nature. So that's very interesting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a beautiful language, and it lends itself so quickly and easily to storytelling, and it's melodic, and it's absolutely beautiful language. Yes, yes.
Oh, thank you. So Fred, speaking of melodies, what are you thinking
yeah.
to show us next?
Oh, you want me to play a little song or something?
I mean, like there is a comment on the chat saying something about like the intriguing thought that you put on our minds about jazz. Jazz with your flute.
When I play jazz, it goes with the the piano and the saxophone and the beat of the drum. But when I try to play jazz, by myself, it doesn't really go right. I have to hear the sounds. But I'll just give you a little, see if I can play jazzy by myself. Though. I know those sound right, but normally I use a higher flute. So a higher flute is I can go even faster, and I give all these like little trills, like or so I put all that together, and you got the jazz playing in the back of me, and actually everything all flows together. So, but I do love playing very traditional old style flutes. The flutes that I look for are the ones that are not tuned to any key. They actually call those the grandfather flutes because the flute maker is out making it, and something inspires him, maybe watching the animals feed or watching animals play, or something just intrigues him like nature, and he actually makes that flute to make it sound like whatever he's hearing. So it's not tuned to any key. And those are the flutes that I really love because you can actually make your own songs that nobody can steal or take from you. But these flutes here are actually tuned to a pentatonic scale. So when I'm playing, somebody can actually see my fingering and then learn that song. But with the old traditional flutes that are not tuned, it's actually made that way, and it's a one-of-a-kind flute. So when somebody tries to play my song, or it's actually passed down generation to generation, that flute is, so nobody can't take that song, or nobody can't make their own version because that song is, or that flute is made for that song. So that's one of the flutes that I really enjoy playing. And now, since these flutes are actually tuned to pentatonic scale, we actually have tablatures made for the flute now, so others can play it. Anybody can pick up the flute and just walk up the scale and walk back down the scale, and all you do is it just takes a little bit of breath. That's all it takes, and you just cover your holes. So by the end of an hour, you'd be making your own song, and everybody has a heart song, but yeah, they do have tablatures, and you can actually play your patriotic songs, and you actually can play songs now. I've seen people play Adele songs, Journey songs. I did have a band earlier, and we used to play a lot of cover songs. The flute was actually the voice. We played Jimi Hendrix, we played Fleetwood Mac, we played a lot of other ones too. So we did play some big shows with the native flute, and I'm very surprised it got that far. And like I said, the flute is very versatile. You can do whatever you want. So I'm up for anything new. So right now, my main goal is probably other flute makers and flute players have played with orchestras. That's my next goal, is to play with an orchestra. I did play with a Chinese orchestra, and that was a little different, but it still matched with it. So, and I don't know how to read notes. I play by ear, and that's what's so good about the native flute. And there's no wrong note in the native flute because all the notes go together. So, and it's only the traditional one is only a 5-hole, but since that we play a lot of different songs on the contemporary side, that's why you have, or that's why they added a 6-hole. So it's a 6-hole flute.
Oh, oh, that's very interesting. And I'm glad that you talked about like what would be like something like it's so interesting to hear you talk about the like other music genre that how you integrated. I never thought about that you would be open to that. So now I'm curious to know, how do you guys build community in your region? Like that's has it happened naturally, or are those things that you look out for? What do you think, Jannette?
Well, I know I have a lot of requests for me to come into the schools and even to do presentations at our local libraries, sharing, again, my art, the culture, the language. At the schools, I know they love having me come because I tick a lot of the education boxes, you know, between, again, art and culture, language, history, geography, and we talk about all of those things. And even at college level, all the way, you know, from primary, elementary, middle, and high school, I've been into our local schools. And I bring in a pile of my artwork, I bring in my clothing and my regalia, and I put it on and I tell the stories. And often we even have a really neat exchange where the art teacher will have a project inspired by my visit, and they'll either paint a mural or they'll write a paper or, you know, paint their own little paintings or do native weavings or something, you know. So it's a really neat interaction, and they always have such great questions and kind of push me to think about things in another perspective through child's mind or educational mind and all kinds of things. So for me, my favorite way of connecting with the community and outreach is through the schools and libraries, and, you know, as just an educational interaction. Yeah.
Great.
Wow. Yeah. Well, when I first picked up the flute, I didn't know how far in the world was going to take me. And I have a mentor named Roger McGee that actually lives in Oregon. And he's the one that taught me how to do this and that on the flute, making it over the phone. But it was all my trials and error that actually, you know, taught me. So the more mistakes I made, the more I learned. But he told me that when you play, there's always somebody out there listening. One person, 10 people, it didn't matter. So when you play, it speaks to the heart. And then after that, you know, it just goes on and on and on. And so when I'm playing, next thing you know, people will come up to me and say, you know, I want you to play here. We've got a library. The flute speaks for itself. So I just play and it does the rest for me. I mean, I play funerals. I probably played like 3 weddings already. I mean, and I even got called to a conference for a business conference to play, and that's kind of, you know, but the flute soothes everything, you know, it really just mellows out everything. And so I try to give back to going to libraries. And one of my goals this year is to play as much libraries as I can in the state of Kentucky. Kentucky has 120 counties. So all that 120 counties have libraries. So that's kind of like my goal, is to see how many libraries I can play. See if I can try to hit all of them. It doesn't matter how long it'll take me, as long as I mark it off and say, I did this library. So I actually have a library coming up this weekend in Mason County, Maysville. And giving back to the community, we actually started a flute gathering 12 years ago in Lawrenceburg. How that started is that we rented a house from we rented a house, and our landlord lived right across the street from us, and her granddaughter would come over, and I would make our traditional food, and I would give her like fried bread or tortillas and some of our native soup. So one day she went to school, and they were talking about Native American history, and she told the teacher that, well, I have a Navajo, a Native American that lives across me, and we eat fried bread. And the teacher told her that there's no such thing as full-blooded natives that are still around. And after that, that's what really pushed my wife and I to educate, to let people know that we are still here. We're not marked off in the history books, or not in movies that Hollywood portrayed our culture. And so that's what really strive us to give back. So now we do an event. So this year we're actually having it over at Fort Herod in Harrodsburg. It's a free event, and we have flute gathering, flute makers and flute players come from all over. We'll have traditional dancers. My main goal is to bring the traditional dancers, Comanches, Apaches, bring that traditional to Kentucky and let the people see the different dances and the different cultures. All us Native American, Native Indians, we all have different languages, different ways, but a lot of similarities. So, but the language is very important. So that's kind of where we try to give back.
That's great, and this is so stimulating for me. And being from Mexico City and coming to Kentucky, like I think a lot of people have preconceptions on how a Mexican should look like, and they are afraid to say it, or they say it in a way that is like I don't feel very comfortable with. So having, like you both mentioned, like having these conversations, like maybe around food or around like Jannette, what you were saying about like the kids, how they ask like very like interesting questions in a very particular way. I think it has been like a way for me to talk about like stereotypes and also like language, about how I didn't know how some words were pronounced, and then someone also doesn't know how something in Spanish is really pronounced. So it has been a way I can hear from you to build these bridges between like what you were saying, Fred, like being Native Americans are in books or only on movies. So that's very interesting. And then do you have anything else to add on that? So we can.
I'll let you go.
Absolutely. I think it's about education, and sharing these cultures, these languages, and bridging that gap. Like Fred says, that we're still here. The numbers may be dwindling, and we may be intermarrying. I have many different nations of cultures within me. I'm not a thoroughbred, purebred Cherokee, but I certainly do have Cherokee running through my veins. But for people to learn about their culture, whatever it is, to look into their family's history and find out where your people came from and why they chose to do the things that they did, and how they came to this continent, if this is the continent that they're at, But yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions about Native Americans, and again, there are so many different cultures. I know in the Cherokee language, speakers are dwindling every year. When I first started learning and studying this language in 2005, the statistics showed that there were about 11,000 fluent speakers. And now, in the latest studies, it's down to 2,000 fluent speakers. And there has been a resurgence to try to breathe life back into the language. Because if we lose this language, we start to lose the culture, and we start to lose our identities, and really all native cultures or languages are in danger of extinction if we do not continue to preserve them and use them. And so I really want people to embrace those cultures and keep them alive. Yeah.
Wow, that's nice. See, I was raised on the reservation. I hate to say sent. I was sent to a government boarding school when I was a little boy. Went to boarding school in Crystal, New Mexico. It was up in the mountains in New Mexico, and there's they took our language, they cut our hair, we're not supposed to speak or say any of our songs or language. If not, we would be disciplined. We would have to sit or kneel in the middle of the dormitory and hold a dictionary as, discipline that, for speaking their language. But as I got out of the boarding school, I started to hear my parents, my uncle, my grandma, grandpas speaking the language, and the language is already in the blood. For some reason, I already knew what they were saying, but I couldn't speak it. So I had to learn the language on my own, and just by listening to them. So I speak half the language, but I understand fully. And back home, we have about 5 radio stations that speak Navajo all day long. We have like two TV station that speaks Navajo. And years ago, our elders are the only ones that used to speak Navajo. And so now, today, they're actually bringing the traditional Navajo language and other languages like Cherokee, Comanche, other tribes back into the schools to teach the language, so they can carry the heritage on. And today, a lot of our medicine men, our elders, our shamans are leaving this world, going to the next, taking all the traditional songs and the prayers with them, and it's not leaving us, the youth, anything behind. So now that we're trying to actually keep the culture alive, and back home, there's a community college that actually set aside, our Navajo president actually set a funding aside to teach, you can actually go to school to be a medicine man, a shaman. Wow. I thought that was very, interesting. I was like, wow, that'd be nice. And yeah, so yeah, the culture is who we are, or the language is who we are. We take away the language, we are lost. But one thing that I didn't really understand, living on the reservation, you get so tunnel vision, and then you move away from the reservation and you live in the real world where everything is moving fast, technology. And my grandfather lived 105. He's actually a medicine man. And I watched him do all the ceremonies. And one thing that he said to me was that, we're all related. When you get older, you'll understand, and you really watch your words and how you speak. Words are powerful. Means like you don't say anything, you watch your words. So, that's one thing that, I keep sacred to my heart. What he said is that, we're all related. So that really opened my eyes.
That's beautiful. Yeah, that's beautiful and so present, right? In a era where we feel like we're so divided, to think about those commonalities is the most important thing as humanity. Oh, this is so stimulating. What do you guys, what is next for you? Like, what are your new projects or events?
Well, of course, I'll be continuing this series. I had taken a break for a couple of years just due to life happenings and things going on, but I'm ready to jump back into this series again. But I've been working on my native regalia and updating that. So I've been making ribbon skirts and the ribbon shawls. And then I have another jewelry line in mind that I'm starting to prepare for and do research for, that's fire enamel jewelry. And I do intend to use the Cherokee language on that too. And I just, whatever else comes my way, I never know what I'm going to get into.
That's great. That's great.
Well, for me is I like to educate more about not just my culture, but with all nations. Like get more involved with letting people know that natives are still here, not just in Kentucky, but all over. You know, a long time ago, before everybody came, we were there's 550 nations, I think, right now, I think. I'm not really good with numbers, but that's how many nations right now. But there was, at one time, there was more. This whole United States was natives. So for them to claim that, you know, nobody was here in Kentucky, it was kind of like, I don't know why they say, you know, there's no natives out in Kentucky, but we ran all this land, even our cousins down south, you know, they migrated up, and, you know, we migrated down. There's even Inuits in Alaska. I'm sure up towards Canada and up that way by Yellowknife, and that speak the language. I know at one time we were with Apaches. So when I hear Apaches speak the language, I know what they're saying. Like the Apaches language it seems like they cut the Navajo word in half. See, like we say ya-eh, that's hello. The Apache would say yahe. So they kind of, and there's actually Inuits up in Alaska, Athabascans, that speak the same language as Navajos. So if I go up there, I can actually understand, you know, their language. And it's amazing because when I hear them speak, we as Navajos or natives, we actually speak in the back of our throat. We have like a guttural sound. So like when I hear Alaskans speak, I can actually say the words like unuk and all that, you know, they talk in the back. So I can, you know, it's easier for me than like trying to teach my wife Navajo. It just don't sound right. So it's kind of like me trying to talk Southern, and just don't sound right. So, but you know, Cherokee does sound very Southern. You know, when I first came here, and we got to meet some flute makers or flute players that are full-blooded Cherokee, and they had this very Southern, you know, accent. So, you know, I lost where I was at. But my goal is to actually be more part of organizations that try to spread awareness for natives and teach others. That's why I'm trying to go to different libraries, and I do schools. And I never thought, you know, being made fun of all my life, and here I'm standing in front of bleachers full of kids, and I'm the only one standing there. And all my life, people make fun of me. Here I'm standing there with a flute, and I got this big bass flute, and I can just play my flute, and it just gets silent. And that's just how powerful the flute is. So I like to do more schools, and like I said, I like to play with an orchestra. I like to teach more, and I actually want to try to do a flute retreat with other flute makers to get them together and learn from each other's style. See what else we need. And then try to be more part of art. You know, art is very, art comes a long ways, you know. I knew this one, I played this one event, and then this lady came up to me, and then she wanted me to play her son's memorial. And come to find out, he was inspired by the Hopi clown. I don't know if you ever seen a picture of a Hopi clown. They look like a clown, but they're all it's black, white, and they have these little I don't know how you say, horns or tentacles that come out, and they're called tricksters. So he went out to New Mexico and saw the Hopi clown, or the Zuni clown, and that inspired him to be an artist and use that whatever he saw, and he became a big artist in New York. But everything all, you know, came to an end and took his life. So I thought that was very powerful too, that seeing the clown and him incorporating that into his art. So yeah, so anything you see, art is something that is very that helps depression and a lot of other mental issues. So you put a pencil in front of someone and they would draw, you know, it works. And I have a lot of projects, and another project I'm working on is Navajo tea. I'm actually growing Navajo tea. I grew up on Navajo tea back home ever since I was small. We didn't have sodas or anything, you know, it was very poor. So we would break off tea and just boil it and drink it with sugar. So now tea is a very herbal medicine that we use back home, and it actually helps with indigestion and helps your urine and everything. So a person started making tea bags out of it in Phoenix, and he up and passed away, and that stopped everything. So it's like, hey, this is my chance to do something. So my wife and I, we started growing Navajo tea. So we actually plant our first batch last year, and it's actually coming up this year. So we're hopefully we can become the first tea growers in Kentucky and try to be Kentucky proud. So that's one of our big goals.
Oh, that's awesome. I would like to try that.
Me too. I love tea.
Yeah, the tea is has an earthy taste. But I'll send you all some if you give me your address.
Yeah, I love it. Love to. Yes, yes.
Okay, and now I would like to open the Q&A segment. And we have the first question from Emily. Do you feel Kentucky culture is interwoven in your work or has influenced your work? And an additional question that is also related is from Mark Brown. Jannette and Fred, can you talk about any other upcoming events where we can experience your work? And you put the link on the flute gathering. So yeah, we should all go to the flute gathering this month. Who wants to start in this one?
So Alex, go ahead, Jannette.
I currently don't have any events or exhibits going on in the immediate future. Like I said, I've been kind of on a hiatus due to some family stuff going on and just kind of recalibrating. And I just recently obtained my tribal card, so that's going to change a lot of opportunities for me. And so, like I said, I'm recalibrating, and I'm open to new opportunities that may come my way and be offered. And as to the Kentucky inspiration, I guess was the other question. You know, I'm not from here originally. Like Fred, I'm an implant. I was born in California and raised in Oregon. I've lived all over the United States through the years. I moved here in 2004. And I would say I absolutely am influenced by Kentucky and living here, but it's from the nature and my surroundings. I live out in the country, and my studio is here on our property. And a good day is not leaving home and being able to be in my garden and photograph, you know, the wildlife and the flowers and the scenery and the mountains and the storms and everything, to be able to paint from those images. So yes, from a natural perspective, absolutely, Kentucky does inspire me, and I love it here.
Thank you.
Well, for me, let's see. I have so much going on. There's only one of me, and I got the tea going, and I would love to make more flutes, but my flutes are made one at a time, and I have so much orders to catch up. And we live on a farm now, and we actually our flute gathering, and then we own a little snow cone kiosk too. So, and then I have family that moved out from the reservation in Lawrenceburg. So I'm actually helping them trying to settle in Kentucky. So they've been on the reservation all their lives. And like I said, I have so much going on, but I want to attend a lot of these upcoming art festivals and show more of the flute, since I was nominated to make the Kentucky Governor's Art Award, and I like to give back by showing my appreciation that the Kentucky Arts did pick me to do that. And as far as I'd like to thank Mark and the whole crew art for putting on the what was that called? The native reflection art, because if it wasn't for them going all over, taking their time and going different places, setting up all these other artists' work, we wouldn't be where we're at right now, because I wouldn't, you know, for them, they opened a lot of doors for me, and they opened a lot of doors for the other artists to show their work and the tradition. And it would be nice for, you know, for them to start another, you know, native reflections too, because you start one, and you know, it's going to go even bigger. And because you never know where, you know, they might actually start an art gallery. You never know for artists. And so being part of that has opened a lot of doors for me. Like playing, I was invited to the, like when I first came to Kentucky, I went to the Frazier Museum. I was all like, wow, this is all amazing. And then after the Native Reflection passed on, and next thing I was asked to play there. And I was like, it just blew my mind. And I did contact them to see if I could put a flute to show in their the museums. So and then to be nominated to make the Arts Award, that is something big. And to make a statement as far as Native American art. So Native Reflections too, it might open bigger doors. Just like the Native Dawn, we started one and just kept going and going and going, and now we're like 12 years into it now.
That's great. And that's also really, I agree. There should be a Native Reflections too. I would agree. So a couple of shout outs. We have in the audience, and I'm sorry that if I don't pronounce it correctly, Bridget Trucks. And she's gonna have a solo art show from July through September at the Center for Rural Development in Somerset, and everyone is invited. and also Lawson Glacier Green put YouTube link on the chat to see their work. So that's really great. Yeah, and this could be expanded into a series of its own. I agree, Tamara. I support that. So do you have anything else to add, any concluding thoughts, or should we give it back to the microphone to Mark?
I don't have anything more to say, I don't believe.
Mark, take it away.
Thank you, Cynthia. Thanks so much, Fred and Jannette. You all have shared your lives, stories with us today, and despite all the challenges and the tragedies that you've both faced individually, through your arts and your languages and your living traditions, you've really thrived in Kentucky, and we're excited to have you as fellow Kentuckians. To learn more about the Arts Council's traveling exhibits, we had mentioned the Native Reflections exhibit today. You can visit artscouncil.ky.gov to see more exhibits in the recent past and the coming future. Wanted to mention again, the Native Dawn Flute Gathering is happening later this month, presented by Fred Keams, and with support from the Kentucky Arts Council. That'll be May 26th through the 28th at Old Fort Herod State Park in Harrodsburg. This video will also be available on Facebook. If you visit the Arts Council's Facebook page and then under videos, you'll see it there. You're welcome to share this with friends and forward to others. The video will also later appear on the Kentucky Arts Council YouTube channel. So we appreciate everyone being here today and for asking great questions and listening to these important stories. We'll invite you to come back next week for our final installment, which is called Continent to Commonwealth. And it's a conversation with Asian and Asian American artists of Kentucky. Now, the two artists will be Lakshmi Sriroman of Lexington and Yoko Nagami of Whitesburg. And the host will be Joel Buno, who's with Crane House, Asia Institute of Louisville. So thank you all once again for being here today. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.